Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at A24's new feature, Death of a Unicorn. Weird movie, man. I'm looking forward to talking about it. It's a horror comedy. Stars Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, Will Poulter, Richard E. Grant's in it. New writer-director Alex Scharfman. A little bit of magic in here, a little bit odd. Stick around for the review. We're also going to take a look at some upcoming television. We had a little success, though, TV Corner segment not too long ago. We're going to take a gander at Apple TV Plus's The Studio, starring Seth Rogen, and talk a little bit, just a little bit, about this Netflix show Adolescence that people have been telling us to check out. So stick around for that. We're going to take a look at Queer, the Luca Guadagnino picture from late last year. We missed this one. It came out right around awards season. Some people said Craig got snubbed for the nomination. Sorry, this is Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey starring in a film 1950s Mexico City based on William S. Burroughs novel. We're going to talk about it. It's an odd movie for sure. Also an A24 joint. So it's a back-to-back A24 double header this week on Off Script. Before we get to all of it, we need to talk about the news. Normally I would talk about what we've watched this week, but we've been busy. We've been grinding, man. We've been watching this, and most importantly, checking out news from Cinemacon, which we're excited to talk about. Before we get into it, though, Andy, tell the folks at home, what is Cinemacon? Is that in the United States? Where does this happen? What is this thing?
Yeah, so Cinemacon is the annual convention of big film studios, which takes place in Las Vegas every year. All the big studios, Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, and Amazon MGM. They do presentations, talk about their upcoming film slates, new projects, more information on existing projects, those kinds of things. Usually there's some trailers, not necessarily shown to the internet, rather, but just the people going there. And it's so funny because the trades are like, oh, they have to sit and try and describe what happens in these trailers that we don't actually get to see. But it's a big deal. It's when, again, a lot of films are either announced or more information is learned. So we got a lot of announcements in just the last few days. We're going to get into it.
That's right. We got the top 5 best stories for y'all. We're not going to go through the whole thing. We're just going to get to the goods, the things you want to keep up with. First things first, we got it up on screen if you're watching us live. The Beatles biopics from Sam Mendes. We got the cast of the 4 Beatles. We got a release date. It's weird, man. It's really odd. Let's get into it, though. Andy, who's playing the Beatles? Who are we going to have? Who's playing the almighty Beatles in the Beatles biopics?
It's our up-and-coming white guys that we all love. Paul Mescal as Paul McCartney, Harris Dickinson as John Lennon, Joseph Quinn as George Harrison, and Barry Keoghan as Ringo Starr. And this isn't going to be out for a while. This is coming out April 2028. But they're planning right now to release all 4 films. This is going to be 4 separate movies about each person. They're going to release all 4 films in 1 month, all in that month, which is a really bizarre strategy. They're calling it like a bingeable experience. I'm not real sure if that's going to work or if they're actually going to do that, because logistically that doesn't seem real possible, but that's the story.
Yeah, Sam Mendes spoke on this, a director. Quote, "We're not just making one film about the Beatles, we're making 4. He said, perhaps this is a chance to understand them a little more deeply. Perhaps y'all don't have a plan. That's what I think. I think they don't know what they're doing. I think they have a loose idea of making multiple features with these guys. They got them signed up for a multi-picture deal. I'm sure they got access to the Beatles library. That's supposed to be a thing here. This is first time access to all these songs for a biopic that other people haven't had access to. That's great. But dude, what do you mean 4 movies in a month? How's that even gonna work? 4 movies in April? What are you gonna have them down the Cineplex, 4 screens? Are you gonna do 1 a week? What about small screens, right? Like small screen theaters. The one I used to work at way back in high school only had 10 screens. So what do you just get them like John and Ringo, and then they got to go down the street to AMC for George and Paul? What? It doesn't defies logic, boggles the mind. But Sony seems confident. They were talking about how this is a bingeable model, and they want to try something new and pioneer something different in the spirit of the greatest band ever, they said, or something like that. I'm not so sure. I'm a skeptic. What do you think, Andy?
I mean, we know how hard it is to get people into the theater, into the cinema. It's hard to get people to go one time a month. How are you going to get people to go to 4 movies, which are all about the same subject? Because it's basically the same story, but told from different perspectives in a kind of Rashomon sort of way. Yeah. I just don't know how you get people to the theater that much. This sounds like it would be a brilliant streaming spectacle event, but it's a terrible theatrical strategy, I think.
Yeah, I do think the cast is solid. Worth mentioning, there were some rumors about this way back in February. I rattled off a tweet about it. 100% correct, by the way. The four that I heard were going to be it are it. So it turns out, if you're listening to Off Script, you're following us on Twitter, you get movie news months ahead, man. Fingers on the pulse. But we got to move on. Next story. Spider-Man 4 has a title. Tom Holland is in it. What is this movie going to be, Andy?
So, yes, we got a title reveal, Spider-Man 4, Brand New Day. Continuing the trend of real boring Spider-Man titles, along with Far From Home, No Way Home, Beyond Home. I can't remember them all. They all mixed together. But this is actually slated for next summer 2026, July 31st, 2026. So late in the summer. This is going to take place between the two Avengers films that are coming out. It's also based on an existing comic storyline, which kind of where we left off in the last Spider-Man film. Everyone forgets who Spider-Man is, and he kind of has to start over from the beginning, like his marriage. Even his wife forgets him. So it's going to be interesting how we kind of tie this back together. We know Jacob Batalon is returning as his best friend Ned. Don't know if we're gonna get Zendaya. I think she might be done with these. Man, she got into Marvel at the right time, and she got out at the right time. So I don't think she's coming back.
I remember going to the theater when that third Spider-Man film came out and being astounded at the number of cars in the parking lot because we were rolling off of COVID. And yeah, Top Gun had come out and done well. I couldn't believe how many people were coming out for the new Spider-Man feature. And since that time, like as that movie ended, it ended in a really great spot for the character. Yeah, Peter Parker is all but forgotten in his universe. Fresh slate, blank page. He's going to college. He's still got spider powers, but nobody knows his identity. It's great. You could go anywhere. You could do Gwen Stacy. You could cast somebody new, right? So a lot of potential here. But also, Tom Holland ain't getting any younger, man. Like, he can't do many more of these movies. I bet they got him on like a 3-picture deal, probably, with some Avengers appearances and a couple other, Marvel cameos he'll make and some stuff. And then he's out. Like, he can't do much more. He obviously wants to move on. He has had trouble getting going. He's done some Netflix projects, which are good, but he hasn't really popped off the screen. He did the Cherry with Apple TV. Right now, he's doing Odyssey with Nolan, which I'm convinced he has to be good in. I don't think Christopher Nolan will put a bad performance on the screen, especially in the middle of his movie. So I think he'll be great in that. He'll probably hit in Spider-Man, but they're going to have to hand this off in the next 5 or 10 years, right? Like, this can't keep going.
Yeah, Spider-Man is famously a teenager, and Tom Holland's going to be on his second mortgage or second marriage soon. You gotta. It's a young role, and he's not getting any younger. He'll probably be in the next two Avengers film and his own Spider-Man film, but I don't see him really going past that. Again, they got to hand it off, and this has been the real struggle with Hollywood. It's like Wolverine, like they cannot cast new X-Men to save their lives, and yeah, the nostalgia is great, but like you can't keep going another 10 years off that.
No. Another story out of the superhero space, out of the Cinemacon. For the webheads out there, dude, this is a bummer. We got news about the next animated Spider-Man, the Beyond the Spider-Verse one with Miles Morales, with the sick animation. You remember those movies? Yeah, well, the third one's coming, but you're gonna have to wait for it. What is this about, Andy? This is a bummer. This is a little letdown.
So if you remember in 2023, I can't remember. Across the Spider-Verse, the second one, again, they got to work on these titles. Across the Spider-Verse was like my second favorite movie of the year. Really loved it. Ends on a big cliffhanger. And it also said Beyond the Spider-Verse coming spring 2024, which seemed impossible. And lo and behold, we got an announcement that the third Spider-Verse movie, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is coming in 2027, which means they have not even started it. They don't even have a script yet. No one's recorded voice lines. Shamik Moore keeps crashing out online. So it's just like, oh, it's so disappointing. It will have taken 9 years to make 3 movies. It's just like, what do we do? And it was a hit. It was a huge hit for Sony. So I don't know why they didn't just greenlight it right away. Luckily, it's animated, so you don't have to age down the cast or anything like that. But it's a big bummer that we're gonna have to wait. At least another 2 years to see this.
This is a huge L from Sony, like all around. There was so much smoke around that last Spider-Man movie. I saw GIFs from that. I saw clips from that movie for months. People were recording in the theater and posting on Twitter live, like just to be like, look at this incredible sequence, check out this incredible animation, fantastic storytelling. You got to get the 4K. Everybody was nuts about this movies. They teased a 2024 release and then nothing. They fumbled. Not only did they fumble, they didn't even plan a fumble. They didn't even know, they didn't even have a bus to get home from the game. Like they had no plan. And they promised everybody that they did. It's such a letdown, dude. Like I hope the next one has the same head of steam that the previous one did. I hope they can keep it going. It reminds me of like Fast X. Like what were you thinking? It reminds me of Force Awakens. What were you thinking? You didn't plan the next one? You just told everybody it was going somewhere and hoped you'd find it along the way. Awful. I can't believe it. It's such a bummer. Best case scenario, they hold on to the magic. The third one comes out. It's great. And then we can all like buy the box set and remember them all fondly together, not having to wait this huge amount of time for no good reason. Just awful.
Yeah, it's really surprising that they just didn't have it ready to go or just start on it right away. Maybe it had to do with shifting things behind the scenes with different studio heads and things like that, but real disappointing. But I'm glad we at least have a date now.
Yeah. Hey, worth mentioning, at least we're getting 2 Spider-Verse movies between like Batman and Batman 2, right? Like the sooner they can get Rob Pattinson in the suit, the sooner we can get a Spider-Man movie, I guess. Speaking of getting back in the suit, Keanu Reeves is doing John Wick 5. Big announcement. Director Chad Stahelski's returning. This is coming hot off of Lionsgate putting out Ballerina with Ana de Armas in theaters this summer. But it's weird because I remember Keanu Reeves saying he's getting old and he can't really keep hanging in these flicks. What do you know about this, Andy?
So the Baba Yaga is back. We don't know any story details or how exactly he's coming back. John Wick died kind of in the end of 4, but maybe he didn't, or maybe who knows? Maybe he faked his death as he did like 5 times in that series. So we don't know, but he is coming back with again Chad Stahelski, who's helmed the other 3, and also did a lot of fight choreography for things like the 4th Matrix movie. A couple of other John Wick announcements. They're going to be making an animated prequel film where John Wick fights all of these bad dudes to basically get out of his contract with the High Table. And also Donnie Yen is going to be directing a spin-off film about Kane, the blind assassin that shows up in John Wick 4. He's going to get his own movie as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the John Wick verse. We don't quite have a date on this yet, but we knew that he'd be coming back. It's just too successful not to.
Late adopters to John Wick, if you have not kept up with this series, good news. I hadn't seen really any before the 4th one. I had taken a swing at the first one once or twice, but never really fell into it. Heard 2 was great. Heard 3 was weird. Walked into 4 blind. Went and saw it with Andy. Had a great time. So if you're thinking like 5 of these movies, I haven't seen any of them. What's this Ballerina show about? Good news. Lionsgate is looking to onboard you. They are growing this series. It's not like wrapping up. They want people to come in. John Wick 5 will be more of that energy. And I think 4 ends in a way that gives 5 a nice wide open. We can go in a lot of different directions, so it'll be solid. But like I said at the top, I remember reading that Keanu Reeves is like, man, I'm getting old and like these things beat me up and like I can only do so many more of these. So I think a little like Tom Holland doing Spider-Man, he's got an option for what, 2 or 3 more of these, and then he's probably out. He'll be in cameo status for the rest of his days. You know, he'll show up like Patrick Stewart in X-Men movies.
If they were smart, they would kind of make him some sort of mentor thing where he trains a new assassin so he doesn't have to do all the kicking and punching and all the action stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Donnie Yen's older, and shoot, not only did he do great in the last one, he's getting his own project. So yeah, no, lots going on in the John Wick universe. Don't feel like it's too weird. You can't jump in. You can. If you're already a Wickhead, you're probably going to like it, man. Like, good news, more is coming. So hopefully solid. I know they had a weird run with that TV show that supposedly wasn't that awesome. Anyway, one more story from Cinemacon before I move on. Quentin Tarantino has a Once Upon a Time Hollywood follow-up coming up, but it's not going to be his almighty 10th feature. Nay, somebody else is going to direct it. Who's taking this on? Who's picking up where Tarantino left off?
In a really weird turn of events. So much so, yesterday was April Fool's. Everyone thought this was fake. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is just they're pulling our leg." Like lots of other kind of fake announcements that happened. But the great David Fincher is going to be taking on this project with Netflix. Which means I guess that's where it will debut. Very strange thing. Some weird setup about the rights to this film. Universal, I believe, owns the rights to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the story, but Quentin Tarantino made a deal to where he still is able to own and use the characters. So it's not technically a sequel or a follow. It can't be related. But he can reuse some of the same characters, which is what he's going to do. It's going to be something in the 70s, and our boys Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt's character are back for another 70s adventure. No word on the story yet, but it's really strange now. Like everyone thought this was fake yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't talk to anybody about it until April 2nd because I just couldn't. I saw Deadline report on it and Hollywood Reporter. All the big ones were all running with this one story. Like, this is a real thing. And I was like, no. David Fincher is not going to take over a Tarantino project starring Brad Pitt in something that is technically not a sequel because somebody else owns the rights. That all sounds insane. Perfect, complicated film head April Fool's fodder. And I got to wonder how the talent attached to this stuff feels when people get online and go, haha, funny joke, guys. Like, that's really cute. Hey, you got us, April Fools. But no, this appears to be a real thing. Whether or not it'll get made is another story entirely because, like Andy said, seems very complicated. But I'm a Fincher guy. I like David Fincher. I've liked David Fincher for a long time. I know since he's been attached to Netflix, a lot of his projects feel like they maybe have lacked the creative headwind that he used to have because only some of his projects go to theaters limited time and he couldn't get Mindhunter season 3 made. But even still, they're funding him. They seem to have a good working relationship. So this seems great for him. Brad Pitt reportedly came to him with the script and said, hey, I think there's something here. We should work this out. I think he and Tarantino get along just fine. For all intents and purposes, this could be a cool project, but it definitely sounds lofty, I think, in its aspiration. Like, it just sounds so odd. Fincher's going to do a Tarantino thing, and Tarantino still isn't going to make his big almighty 10th. We'll see if he makes his last movie. Like, I don't know. It just sounds odd, but even still, I think this is the 5 biggest announcements from Cinemacon. Disney made some stuff, but not too much noise. Everybody kept it pretty buttoned down. But these are things I felt like we wanted to talk about. Any thoughts before we talk about the box office, Andy?
Well, again, the Tarantino story, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood follow-up, is so weird. It's like a Mad Libs exercise where it's like this incredible movie and this director and this writer, and these stars, but not working together. But on Netflix, it's just, again, everyone thought it was fake. Some exciting announcements. CinemaCon goes through Thursday, and so there's still going to be more announcements probably later tonight, and tomorrow we'll report on those next week.
I love it. All right, one more story before we get to Death of a Unicorn. We got to talk about the box office. Snow White is struggling. And I think if you've been listening to the show, you may not be that surprised by that. But you might be surprised to see that new Jason Statham action movie actually doing okay. What's going on at the box office, Andy?
So Jason Statham's a working man, his kind of working class beat him up Jason Statham vehicle, which he's kind of the same guy in every movie, but it works. Yeah. It works really well. Came in at $15 million, which was $1 million ahead of Snow White, which is real embarrassing for a big, expensive Disney, what was supposed to be a blockbuster and a very expensive movie. Dropped 65%, which is pretty steep in its second week. In third place was The Chosen at $11 million. The Woman in the Yard, which we didn't watch, but is a horror movie with Daniel Detweiler, came in just under $10 million, overperforming. The big surprise there. I've heard it's not great, but it is doing decent money. In fifth place, of course, Death of a Unicorn, which we're going to talk about shortly, at $5 million.
I love it. I'm surprised that Disney still isn't waving the white flag on Snow White. They are looking forward to rolling spring breaks across the country, right? Next few weeks, kids are going out of spring break. You're out all week, got nothing to do, send them to the theater, right? Might work out. I mean, shoot, their long game on Mufasa worked out great. Like, they clearly had a strategy that even I didn't understand. As for Working Man, I love that Statham is in this, like, I know he's always been an action guy, but it reminds me of, like, Liam Neeson doing Taken. And suddenly he becomes this, like, his whole career takes this turn into a streak of, like, semi-ironic, hyper-violent action features where he's a guy who's a little too old but can still hang. It's great. Like, and Beekeeper was self-aware enough that it knew what it was doing. I think Working Man is too. That's functionally the same crew, same directors, same cast, right? So like, I don't know. Like, I think it's probably a good time. Haven't seen it. Can't say for sure. As for Death of a Unicorn, man, I was hoping it would do a little better, but we'll talk about it here in a second, I suppose.
I was going to say, so Working Man is apparently based on a novel, and apparently the movie takes itself a little bit more seriously than it maybe should in something like the Beekeeper.
Of course, it's about human trafficking, Andy. That's a very serious thing. Like, the movie poster says "human traffickers beware." Like it says it right there. I mean, absolutely.
But that's not what Statham does.
I'm not joking around about it. No, of course not. No, I hear you. Yeah, I would believe it is a little bit more serious. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. I don't know. Beekeeper had this scene. Anyway, we got to talk about other movies. We spent way too long in the news. Are you ready to move on, Andy? Shoot, I'm sorry. I should get going.
I am.
All right. Andy's going to be taking the summary on this one. Andy, please take it away.
Death of a Unicorn. So this is the latest A24 horror comedy from first-time director Alex Scharfman, starring Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd. They are father-daughter on kind of this road trip to see his executive boss from the company that he works for. They've recently experienced the loss of their mother in the last few years. They have a very tense relationship and not really getting along. Paul Rudd is really hoping to impress this philanthropist at this pharmaceutical head, and he's like, if I can just get on the board and just do 5-10 years there, then I can make some really good money and really take care of us. He's clearly more interested in his own career and not necessarily looking after the family. During an argument on this road trip, though, they hit something with the car in the middle of the road. Is it a horse? Is it a deer? Is it a moose? What is it? Turns out it is a living, breathing unicorn, big horn on its head, not quite dead. And so they decide to put it in the back of the car and continue on. The philanthropists, they're in like a game preserve, so they don't want them to exactly know that they've just killed this animal. We get there and it's this wealthy kind of this very satirical family headed by the great Richard E. Grant, who's very sickly. Taya Leone is his trophy wife. Will Poulter is their idiot son. They're fun. They have a good time, but it's becomes very clear that the unicorn isn't quite dead in their car. They eventually, through a series of happenstance, discover that it has medicinal properties. The unicorn's blood, the unicorn's horn specifically, can cure all sorts of diseases. And they're like, well, we have to monetize this right away. We got to get our scientists working on this. Supply is limited, so we can charge as much as we want. But the unicorn's horn serves a little bit as a beacon, and its parents come calling, wondering what happened to their dear unicorn child. That's our setup. It's a lot going on. Some things work, some don't. Zach, what do you think?
So I think Death of a Unicorn has a good cast. And I think it lands sometimes with the comedy. It doesn't always work. But I think the cast is doing a lot of work here. Writer-director Alex Scharfman is fundamentally new to this. This is his first big feature. I don't know how any director's first feature gets signed with A24. I'm not sure who he knows in the background, but I know he's got a history in the industry doing some producing. So he got a great cast for this, and he got a great distributor for this. So it seems like Death of a Unicorn is going to be something bold and new. And it's bold kinda, and it's new kinda. But I think its biggest fault is that it seems to land in this like rich people in ironic isolation dying tragically and for comedy purposes space that we've seen a lot. Like it feels a lot like The Menu. It reminded me of Companion that we watched a few weeks ago. Andy and I were talking about it before the show. I'm sure we'll come up with other comparisons that I can't think of off the top of my head. But Opus is a great example. And we also watched Opus recently. It just kind of lands in that space and unfortunately doesn't do anything too new. I think the monster design is a little lacking. I know they're unicorns and they look a little different than normal unicorns, but the cast is good, I should say. And there's some good lines and there's some good performances, and I think it's worth talking about.
That's where I wanted to start. Jenna Ortega just can do no wrong. She's a child who's hurting. She's maybe high school, college age. It's a little ambiguous, but our wealthy family is really where the fun is at. Richard E. Grant is doing Shakespeare with the role of Odell, the patriarch of this family, and it's funny because he's very sickly at the beginning of the movie, and he eventually gets better because of the unicorn, being near the unicorn, and he just turns into this whole other Shakespearean character. Like he's like, you would retreat in the face of opportunity. Like he's got these amazing lines. Tay Leone, who I haven't seen in ages, is a lot of fun as the trophy wife, and Will Poulter really gets a lot of the fun stuff as the idiot son who's like into crypto, trying to be an entrepreneur, like is a total bro kind of person, just like total idiot. It's really funny. Anthony Carrigan is in this, who of course played NoHo Hank in HBO's Barry. He's wasted, unfortunately. He doesn't really get a lot of good lines, but it's fun to see him in here. Paul Rudd's probably the weakest person in this cast, which is a rare thing to say. Usually he's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Rudd had an issue with direction, and I don't want to pin it entirely on Scharfman, but like Rudd's done a lot of work, and like we've seen him be a pretty good charismatic father character. And while his character is supposed to be a bit more dialed back and a bit more nervous, and maybe suffering the passing of his wife recently, which is why he's trying to reconnect with his daughter, Jenna Ortega, it doesn't work. It's like he's in a different movie. And Ortega also is like she's in a different movie, but it works. She sets the tone in a way that's refreshing, because while all the other rich heads are dealing with how we're gonna chop up this pony and make money out of it, she's like, hey y'all, maybe we should slow down a second. This doesn't seem like a very good idea. Like, she has this kind of connection with the unicorn right up the front that gives her a totally different outlook on this situation and how we can deal with this dead mystical animal. Meanwhile, everybody else is like, how do we farm this for money? What can we do? And they have these really funny kind of like moral quandary statements that they make, like, well, it'd be for the good of everybody, and if this could cure cancer, think how good that would be, right? While they're just like raking in dollars and getting on their phone, and Will Poulter's like fixing his fourth drink in the scene, like really great. But yeah, Rudd is not good in this, and it's a bummer. Like it's hard to nail down why he's not good, but it's just like he's a little too meek, and he doesn't help move the plot along. He kind of stands in the way of things for the first 2/3 of the movie. No, we shouldn't. Let's go back. No, it's normal. It's all fine. And it's like, it's so obviously not, guy. And I think his character hurts that way. But Poulter's great. Poulter has a run of like 10 minutes in this movie where I swear every line he nails perfect. He gets every good laugh. Every joke lands. Like, he's tremendous. Tons of fun with Poulter. And you're right. Like, it's great to see Tay Leone. I feel like I just said everything you just said back to you. We got to talk about plot. I'm sorry. I just want to talk about performances for a second.
Yeah, so the humor and the performances are probably what work the best. What doesn't really work is the horror side of things. That there's a lot of kind of gruesome killings. The unicorn's parents come in and skewer a hole because they have horns. A lot of people get impaled and gored through. It's never real surprising. It is over the top gory. It's just not that. It's not scary. It's not really meant to be, but it's not really funny either. They eventually they're trapped in different places. They're like, oh, we got to get the unicorn samples out of the house. There's a couple of scientists that are carrying them around. So probably the first half of this works pretty well, and then it starts to kind of lose its way.
Yeah, it's a creature feature. It's a white horse, one horn, bleeding purple creature feature. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's a title. Maybe I can make that title something. It's a creature feature, but the creatures aren't that good. Like, you don't really get a good look at them. And you kind of already have an idea in your head of what a unicorn's going to be. In fact, there's a bit where Jenna Ortega gets these like old, like she does some art research and like what these things are about, these mystical creatures. And like she finds these old tapestries and like they very plainly are like, here's what a unicorn is supposed to look like. And then you start to get a look at these things and you're like, okay, it's all right. But it's a creature feature where the creatures aren't that frightening, like not that interesting. And I don't know, it ends up just being a little... It's like it's missing that lightning. It's missing that zing that you expect from an A24 joint that's like really going to have something special to it. It ends up just feeling a little bit like they just got a closed set at this like chateau set they've got, and we'll get everybody out there and we'll film with 8 people for 2 weeks and we'll make our movie. And it just lacks the zing. It lacks this like spice, this variety that like makes it really jump off the screen.
Right. The comparisons to the menu are apt, and that's where that movie works really well. Is when about midway through, when things get real gruesome, they get real gruesome and entertaining, and in this it just doesn't quite get there. Yeah, Jenna Ortega is putting together these old tapestries, and she's lore building. You also have the on premise help that are double as like SWAT team, and they get all in their gear, and they're trying to hunt the unicorns or get the people out. That stuff doesn't really work very well. Like I said, the main cast is what's the best, but man, there's no suspense. It's supposed to be like a Jurassic Park kind of
Yeah.
suspense, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, they even do like this gag with like the shadow of the creature on this like tunnel wall that's made out of plastic and it looks a lot like, yeah, like Jurassic Park raptors. Yeah, it's a lot like, the family and like David Harbour's Violent Night, right? Like we're out at the lodge for Christmas and our security team also doubles as a SWAT team for some reason. Or even like Cocaine Bear, right? Like this wild creature is running about with like untamed force and like we can only do our best to escape it and evade it, right? Like it works, but it just feels tired. I will say it's efficient. Good thing. It's like 100 minutes, like moves pretty tight, and that's good. And there's some good laughs. Poulter's funny. Jenna Ortega's funny. Richard E. Grant is good. But yeah, it just feels like it's just not quite, doesn't quite have the gusto. I'm running out of things to say about it, Andy. Where are you at?
Well, real quick, one of the plot devices is, the repairing of their relationship between Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd, the father-daughter bond. Man, it just is not convincing. We get a couple of emotional scenes and they just don't really feel earned. It didn't seem like we really got there in a fair way. And it just doesn't work.
Yeah, Rudd's mind is elsewhere. I don't know if he was shooting a drama on the side of this or something, or if he was like in from vacation, but like he just does not seem grounded in the set. Meanwhile, Ortega's like squirting out real tears, man. She's good. Ortega's great. Like no complaints, but overall, just, I don't know. It doesn't end up being more than the sum of its parts. Any other thoughts or recommendations?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend A24's Death of a Unicorn?
I would say save it for streaming or pass if you're not too interested in it. The cast is great. The cast is a lot of fun. The humor is probably the best part of this. The plot is a little messy, a little nonsensical. The father-daughter relationship rebuilding doesn't really work, but it does have a lot of fun moments. Will Poulter is a delight. He's so funny in this at times, but it's just kind of an overall miss.
Yeah, it's a little movie of the week. And that's okay. A24 doesn't always hit it out of the park. Like we know this, like for every great movie they've got a couple that are okay or a little too weird. This one lands in that space. I think there's some people who will be into it. I'm sure there'll be some folks who have a connection, but I don't know. It just feels a little flat. It feels like it lacks a little something. Promising work though. I think Scharfman will probably do more. I'm looking forward to what he does next. He'll probably do some other kind of creature feature. I'm sure he learned a lot making this. Like good, just not exceptional. That's all. Fine movie though. No real complaints about Death of a Unicorn, other than the stuff that I complained about. Anyway, we got to move on. We got to talk about television, Andy, which is not something we normally do on this show. I probably need some kind of fancy noise, zing, bang,
We
boom,
need some
bumper or
music,
something
yeah.
to play. Yeah, we need some energy. Shot out of a cannon is what we need, right? Like nuclear. But currently, what we've got is a special show from Apple TV Plus. We're excited to talk about, and a little bit about this Netflix show too. We teased at the front. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one. The show is Apple TV Plus's The Studio. So, The Studio is the story of Matt Remick, who is an employee at Continental, a very Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount-like studio in Hollywood, California. It's set modern day. Apple TV Plus produced this with them. And Matt Remick's character is just kind of a hard-working guy right up until his boss's job falls out the window, and suddenly there's an opening as the studio head, the top spot, the top dog, the guy who decides what movies do and don't get funded, right? Can distribute hundreds of millions of dollars to talent to genuinely influence art in the industry. Matt Remick runs for it, gets the gig in the first episode of The Studio, and we're off to the races for 7 episodes of madcap chaos in modern Hollywood, where Seth Rogen has to do his best to navigate the highs and lows of making movies from talent who wants to private jet to a screening to executive producers who are doing drugs behind the scenes, all kinds of problems. Who knows what'll happen? The show is The Studio. Right now, 2 episodes are available on Apple TV Plus. I think the 3rd episode drops today. We have seen the first couple, and we just want to talk about it, frankly, because it's real inside baseball, which is a term I'm lifting right from Andy, but I think is perfect to describe what's happening here. It's a show for people who like movies, and we like movies, and we like cinematic television, so why not talk about it? So, Andy, what do you think of the first couple episodes of The Studio?
So I think it's promising. In our first episode, Matt Remick, he's someone who loves movies. He loves, he loves Scorsese and he loves Goodfellas and all those real artistic movies. But the business isn't necessarily that. And once he lands this job, his first assignment is to make the Kool-Aid movie, like the Kool-Aid man who burst through the wall. And by a great cameo from Bryan Cranston, he's got to make this. And Matt Remick is some guy who can't say no, and he wants to say yes to everyone. Yes to Scorsese. There's a bunch of high-profile cameos in this series. It's I think part of what the show is going to be about. And he keeps getting himself in trouble because he's promised Scorsese this, but then he's promised the studio had that, but then he keeps getting himself into these predicaments in a very Curb Your Enthusiasm style predicaments. So it's funny. But it's very, very inside baseball. But I mean, it's a lot about like things that happen behind the scenes, studio heads, movie deals, a lot of the movie business that we talk about on this show, which is great for us and appealing to us. But I don't know how much kind of the average viewer who's not really into all that is going to really appreciate it or be into it. First episode is 45 minutes long, so it's a long pilot, and every episode after that is only a half hour. So it kind of gets a little bit shorter the longer it goes. I think it's promising, but I need to kind of see more. I'm not completely sold on it.
Yeah, Industry Insider is exactly what it feels like, not only in plot and character, but also in format. The Studio is shot as a oneer, right? As a one-take sequence. It's not authentic. They do some whips and hides and do some things with edits to make it look like it's all done in one take, but it's mostly these real long sequences. And that's exciting in comedy because comedy is all about timing. You guys have watched SNL before. You know that a lot of the best Saturday Night Live shorts the last 20 years came from digital shorts, things that are edited in advance so they can cut to and from and move the cameras. All of that gives you a lot more space to work. But when you shoot it in a one take like this or long oneers like this, it's a lot harder. You got to have a real tight script. You got to have a lot of real direction. And Seth Rogen is directing this alongside Evan Goldberg, a longtime partner. Weird that he's directing and also on screen for much of the show. It's a real challenge. But I think a lot of that contributes to the feeling that Andy and I are getting watching this show, which is, God, are normal people going to go for this? Are they even going to care that it's all one take? Are they going to know who Nick Stoller is, the director of Captain Underpants, when they make a joke about him in the first episode? Are they going to know that, like, when the Kool-Aid movie is actually supposed to be a movie about a bunch of food logos and brands in a grocery store, that Seth Rogen made Sausage Party, which is that movie already? Do they know it's self-referential? I don't know. I don't know if people go for this stuff. On my side, I'm enjoying it. I don't know if it's going to continue getting made. Currently, IMDb's got it listed at 7 episodes, I think. So, like, I heard it was 10. I'm not even really sure how long it's going. I don't know if it's getting a season 2, but it is unique. You pointed out when you had first watched this that it reminded you a lot of Babylon, Damon Chazelle's feature, right? Which is very inside baseball. It's all about movies getting made in the 40s and 50s. Yeah, it's kind of got that similar vibe. Like somehow it's got big colors. It's got this big, I don't know, it's big, this big approach to the industry.
Right. Babylon meets Curb Your Enthusiasm is a great description for the show. Like I said, there's a lot of fun cameos in the first episode. We see, of course, Bryan Cranston. Catherine Hahn's also in it. She's the marketing person. Martin Scorsese, who has a couple of pretty extended scenes. He's a really great actor. And lots of other, like, people you'll recognize as writers or director. Charlize Theron makes a brief appearance, and the whole show is going to be like that. The entire series is going to be in the second episode. There's a lot of cameos from directors, writers, actors as well. It opens with Paul Dano doing an action feature for briefly, and then Matt Remick meets him, and he could care less. Which is the other thing I wanted to talk about is, like, Matt Remick's character isn't super likable. He desperately wants to be loved by the celebrities, and he's like, I just want to be invited to Charlize Theron's party. So he loves the movies, but he also kind of is wanting this celebrity and wanting to rub elbows, and his inability to just kind of just like put his foot down in any one direction is, I don't know, it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way.
Yeah, Matt Remick is this like anxiety-fueled nightmare wreck of a man who is wearing clothes that are way too expensive and lives in a house he normally would never be able to afford, and will just say anything to get things rolling to the next step, and he'll just solve it along the way. And I can appreciate him being a problem solver, but he sure comes off as a yes man in episode 1. In episode 2, he has a whole host of problems for a long oneer in this fantastic little plot they've got starring Greta Lee's in it. I like the industry stuff. Yeah, I like the cast. The cast list for the show reads like that Marvel announcement for who's going to be in Avengers. Like, it's like 50 bangers back to back. Charlize Theron shows up in the first episode. Like, I think it's funny and I think it's good stuff. I don't know if Apple's going to make a bunch of money on this. I don't know if people are going to go for it. Like, it sure is odd. It feels like I'm in good hands watching it, but I just don't know who else wants to join me in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it remains to be seen. Third episode is out today, so we'll be checking that out. We'll be keeping up with the show, seeing how it goes. Apparently, Hollywood itself is loving it because it's about themselves, and everyone's going like, "Oh, is that about me, or is that about this person at the studio?" That, and again, that's interesting to them, and it's interesting to those of us who know these people. But like, you know, Catherine O'Hara's in this, and she's apparently supposed to be Amy Pascal, who we were talking about in the news. And it's like, no one is going to know that if you're not really into the studio, and even if you do you care?
Yeah,
you know. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's about all I got to say on the studio. One of the show we want to talk about, just briefly, because I think we want to talk about this more next week. We started checking out Adolescence on Netflix, which I know has been getting a lot of attention. What do you know about the show, Andy?
So I heard a lot of buzz about this. I heard about it on multiple entertainment podcasts I listened to. A friend of mine watched it as well and says you got to check out. Just watch the first episode, see if you like it. And so I did, and it's this really kind of incredible little show. It's short. It's four 1 hour episodes, all done in legitimate one takes. We talk about oneers and one take shots a lot. These are legitimately 1 hour real time episodes in what is an incredible choreography of this thing. The setup is in a North English town on some early morning. The SWAT team bursts into these normal people's house, and they say, "Where's your son? He's been accused of murder." And the son is 13 years old. He's this tiny kid. SWAT team is there. They arrest him. They got guns in the rest of the family. They take him to the police station where he's processed, and meanwhile the family follows behind. And you're not given any information. They tell the family very little. Stephen Graham plays the father, and so then you follow the process of him being processed at the prison, where he has to, you know, his rights are read to him. He has to say, "Do you understand?" He has to get his fingerprints done. Other parts of that, they eventually meet with their own lawyer. But the story unfolds very, very slowly, and he's been accused of a murder of a fellow classmate, and that's all we know. And man, it's a tough watch, but it's really interesting because it's about family and community. And in further episodes, I've watched a little bit farther, but you'll find out motivation and things like that. But the setup is really incredible, and the first episode is just unbelievable. It, like I said, it follows multiple people around this police station for the full hour, because we have the parents, we have the two police officers who are on the case and are looking to prosecute this kid. We have the parents who are like, we don't know what's going on, we need to talk to a lawyer, other people involved. And it's really something pretty impressive. We're going to be talking about it more next week, but Zach, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, for the first couple episodes, there's something I was watching this week. We'll wrap it up next week and talk about the whole thing. So if you haven't seen it yet, you should watch along with us. Come back next week, we'll talk about the whole thing. It's good. The first episode is shot out of a cannon, like gripping television. Second episode's a little slower. I think it has to be. Like, you cannot have 4 episodes of absolute bangers. I don't really know what I'm getting into in episode 3. I hear it's also different. So it's not doing any one thing in particular. It's certainly exploring a few different areas. But uniquely, while it seems like it would be an interrogation of the system, while it would be an interrogation of policing and schooling and public education and public funding and how these systems struggle to connect with children, it's kind of a little bit more about parenting and about where you come from and who you are and how information can get twisted on the internet where parents don't understand what their kids are looking at, and how, you know, school and police can't be your parent for you. Like they can't do the parenting for you. You have to kind of step up and figure it out yourself. And it's tough because Graham is so emotional in it. I know he's involved in the making of the show. I think he's a showrunner, or created by, along with him and Jack Smith.
Yeah, writer as well.
Yeah, like he is so fantastic in what's going on here, along with the lead investigator, D.I. Bascom, played by Ashley Walters, I think is his name. He's awesome. Like, really like him. Really looking forward to seeing more. Most importantly for Netflix, this is a repeatable format. You could do like a True Detective anthology kind of thing. In a year, you can put like Black Mirror. You could put out 4 more episodes of any other story and it would work. You could go to any country. You could do any family. There's a lot of area to run here. So like for what Adolescence is doing, it seems really sharp and really smart. We'll talk about it more next week. I shouldn't sit here and gush about it, but we're watching it. You should watch it with us. We will keep you posted when we post next week about it. Of course, you can always subscribe, like, notification bell, all those things, so you can get to see it. And yeah, we'll talk more about Adolescence next week. In the meantime, keep up with the studio. And if it's good stuff, maybe we'll do some kind of spoiler-oriented review in a few weeks when it's wrapping up. 10 episodes of the studio, by the way. I said 7, it's 10. It's fine. Looked it up. We got to move on. Good Lord, we got trailers to talk about, Andy. An action-packed episode this week. And I'm taking the first one. Perfect. So first up, hold on. Do you mind introducing the name of this segment for me, Andy?
It's time for the trailer park.
Perfect. And our first trailer we're looking at this week is the trailer for the new Paul Thomas Anderson feature, One Battle After Another. So I've been really looking forward to this trailer. Paul Thomas Anderson's the director of, The Master, and man, I was so excited about talking about this. I forgot what Paul Thomas Anderson's directed. This is where people jump out of the YouTube video. One Battle After Another is the story of Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays a man who is struggling to find his wife, who appears to have gone missing. See, he and her are part of a modern, as I understand it, not really a cult, but let's say a fringe living out of the bounds of society, where the two of them are ratty and almost look homeless and have a bunch of firearms and are paranoid about the government and white supremacy, and ultimately something goes wrong. She gets kidnapped and he has to lean on this internal network of paranoid schizophrenics and freakos and wackos and weirdos with phone numbers to hopefully find some firearms, get some action, and get her back. Sounds like it would be something like Nobody, starring Better Call Saul.
Bob
but it's not.
Odenkirk.
Yeah, Bob Odenkirk, but it's not. This is a Paul Thomas Anderson joint. It's a lot more unique. Paul Thomas Anderson formerly directed Punch Drunk Love, The Master, There Will Be Blood, Phantom Thread, I think he did. So it's been a minute since he's done anything big. And this is a big one. It's like Warner Brothers has been weird about it. David Zaslav reportedly doesn't like it that much. It might have an IMAX release. It just seems strange, but for film heads out there, it seems like it's going to be a cool movie. What do you know about One Battle After Another, Andy?
Man, this looks really cool. Looks like a lot of fun. Looks real funny. In the opening trailer, we see Leonardo DiCaprio making a phone call on a payphone, and he's having to give a bunch of code words and code phrases, and he eventually gets to like the third or fourth one and can't remember the answer. That he's frustrated, and he's tried to like talk his way through, and the guy who just won't tell him, he gets real frustrated. So it looks really funny, but also this kind of people who are revolutionaries or attempting to be revolutionaries. We know there's a baby involved. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks hilarious. I've heard the people have seen this because I think it screened at Cinemacon or test screenings recently. Not Leonardo DiCaprio, but Benicio del Toro is apparently just really great, just doing some of his best work. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, me too. Also, yeah, definitely coming to IMAX. Shot on VistaVision, like The Brutalist. So that thing where they run the film through sideways, you get the bigger picture. So should be a good time. Go see it on a big screen. What's next, Andy?
Bring Her Back. So this is the new film from directors Danny and Michael Philippou, who previously did Talk to Me, which we were big fans of on this show. This stars Sally Hawkins as what looks like a foster parent, where she's got several different children from different families all living under one roof, but she's kind of obsessed with some sort of like ritual thing going on, something involving circles. Circle imagery is real big, and this all looks like an attempt to bring her daughter back. This looks real creepy, man. We got creepy kids, we got blood, we got stuff happening in the dark, we got some sort of demonic situation going on, or someone trying to like resurrect someone. This looks real creepy. Comes out May 30th. I'm excited for this.
It's great because Sally Hawkins is so good at playing like a soft, frail woman, right? Like she played the mom in Paul King's two Paddington features. She won an Oscar for Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water, where she plays a woman who's mute and like a woman who does not seem to have a lot of power, but is very caring and is very sweet. This is something she's very good at. So placing her and bring her back is sharp because she seems like somebody who would be cool and calm and down and not be some kind of element of horror. I don't know how exactly she plays in this. Like Andy said, she seems like a bit more of a caretaker. Maybe she's trying to bring her daughter back. I'm not really sure. But what I do know is there's some weird things happening in this trailer, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to bring her back. Probably a good time. Definitely going to have more chill expectations than Talk to Me. Talk to Me got overhyped. I think a lot of people thought Talk to Me was going to be this big, awesome thing, and it's kind of a small indie film. I imagine this will be small too, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I like I said, it looks great. It looks scary. It's got a good summer release date. Usually that's when a lot of the real good horror comes out. I think of things like Long Legs. I'm interested to see where it goes. They seem to kind of have a theme of like people that cross over into the beyond and really shouldn't be.
Yeah, some kind of like, now you just said it, people who cross over to the right, like piercing the veil of life and death, right? Like what's beyond the other side? Can loved ones speak to you? Is there anything there? Is it worth it? Good stuff, good questions. Does seem very similar in tone to Talk to Me, of course, especially with the God, I remember the early teasers for Bring Her Back had the same like 3-word layout as Talk to Me. Yeah, like they kind of play with that a little bit. So we'll see. I know they'd gotten attached to like a Street Fighter movie at one point, and now they're not doing that. They're doing this instead. So I don't know. Keep it here on Off Script for more for Bring Her Back. One more to talk about this week, Andy. This one's a big one for nostalgia heads out there. What do you got?
Coming out the same day as Bring Her Back, so good counter programming, is Karate Kid Legends, which we saw a full trailer of. This was released at CinemaCon as well. This stars Ben Wang as Li Fong, who's just moved to New York from China with his mom. They've suffered, I think, the loss of a brother. It looks like he's getting into trouble at school. Eventually, runs into Jackie Chan's character and. It's just like all these movies, learns about karate. There's a bully at school, that there's a tournament. It's very much like these movies go. Of course, the great Ralph Macchio shows up, and him and Jackie Chan team up to train Ben Wong's character and win the all 5 borough karate tournament, which apparently happens. These movies, let me just do a brief history. So the first original 3 Karate Kid movies happened in 83, 86, 89. It's remade in 1994 with Hilary Swank as kind of a new generation of Karate Kid. It's remade yet again in 2010 with Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, and Jackie Chan as kind of the sensei master figure. And now we're getting what I'm calling like the Avengers of the Karate Kid universe, where we're getting the stars from multiple reboots. And of course, the show has been a hit on Netflix. It has 5 or 6 seasons. So that's probably the reason this movie's happening. And I'm sure we're going to get Hilary Swank's probably going to show up. Elizabeth Shue is probably going to show up who was in the original. This looks like fine summer family fun. I'm not sure how much like martial arts and that kind of stuff is big with the kids these days. In the 80s and 90s, there was this whole like martial arts craze where everyone was signing up their kid for martial arts. There were lots of martial arts movies. I'm not sure how that is these days with that demographic, but it looks fine. I'm sure the crowd that like watches the Karate Kid show will be all into it.
Yeah, maybe Ben Wong has a vaping problem. Or like maybe Ben Wong spends too much time on his phone and Jackie Chan's like, put that away. Like, that's not what we're doing here. We're going to be real serious. I think you're right. I don't know how combative people are about this stuff. Yeah, because like it's definitely low-key like fight advertising. But It's also about standing up for yourself. Obviously, Karate Kid has a lot of room to run with older audiences. I do not have any affinity to this series. I never even saw the first one all the way through. I can't believe Cobra Kai got 6 seasons and people told me to watch it. I'm sure it's great. I just never fell in. You know what I mean? That's all. Like, I just never had a good proper intro into all of it. I didn't watch the Jaden Smith one. I think you're right. This will be the Avengers of Karate Kids. Like, get everybody back. Everybody's got to come back for Karate Kid Legends. And I can't blame him, man. Make hay while the sun's shining. That Netflix series worked. Everybody liked it. Put out a damn movie. Make a second one if you can. You know, sign up Ben Wang for a 3-feature deal and then get him over to Marvel. They'll take care of him. Like, it all seems like a great idea. But as somebody who's not into Karate Kid, I'm probably going to skip it. So I'm probably not super into it. And I think that's okay. For those of you that are, though, dude, Karate Kid Legends looks like the Avengers. Looks like the greatest movie ever.
Yeah. It really does. And like I said, the first one, the original 1983, is a classic for sure of the 80s and of cinema in general. And then it's just been real derivative since then. Apparently, like I said, a resurgence with the show being very successful. And that's why we're getting this. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how it does.
Me too. One more film to talk about before we wrap up the show this week. This is one we missed late last year. I'm really excited to talk about this. I think it's going to be good stuff. Luca Guadagnino's latest feature. Last year, we saw him do Challengers early in the year. He followed up later with this movie, which we didn't really expect, an adaptation of a novel. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm going to be taking the summary. Please excuse my clumsy delivery. The film is Queer. It's 1950 in Mexico City, and Daniel Craig plays William Lee, an American expatriate writer who is living there because he's gay and he hates himself. He's living on the fringes of society, right? Like away from everybody who's hateful in the United States, amongst a small group of other basically expats, also gay, male, I think, writers and artists in Mexico City, and he is drifting from bar to bar, day drinking and smoking cigarettes and using opiates and trading partners freely, when one day he comes across Drew Starkey, a young man, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, playing a character named Eugene Allerton, who's another American expat, a GI, and he immediately takes a fancy to him. The two of them strike up a conversation. Eventually, this leads to a bit of a relationship, but Starkey keeps William Lee at a distance. He doesn't really get an opportunity to connect with him. So William Lee comes up with the great idea to take Eugene along with him on a trip deep into the forests, the jungles of South America, to look for the yaye, or as we call it in the United States, ayahuasca, and maybe find out more about its psychotelepathic capabilities. The film is Queer. It's from director Luca Guadagnino, who formerly did Challengers early last year. This is an adaptation of a William S. Burroughs novel. I know that Luca Guadagnino read the novel, I think when he was 17 or 18. He loved it. He wanted to make a movie out of it. It never really happened. And then while he was working on Challengers with screenwriter Justin Kurtzkis, who'd also wrote the screenplay for Past Lives, Celine Song's last film. They were working on that movie together, and they got to talking. Guadagnino gave him a copy of Queer from William S. Burroughs, an originally unfinished work. Kurtzkis loved it, wrote up a screenplay, and here we are. 6 months later, we have a movie. That's how it works. I told Andy when we were talking about this, reminds me of Ty West and Mia Goth making Pearl after X, right? It was COVID, and they just like, well, let's just make another one, right? We'll just do it. And that's the setting for Queer. It's quite a film. Surprisingly surreal, a little long in a way that I didn't expect, but I think maybe also a little raw in a way that I didn't expect, and heartfelt in a way that was surprising. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. Andy, what did you think of Queer?
This film was definitely a challenge to watch. It's slow paced. I've seen Naked Lunch, which is also a William S. Burroughs film or novel and film made by David Cronenberg. A similar kind of setup. That film is also challenging as well. It's a little slow. It's a bit of a homework film. It's a bit of eating your vegetables because it's challenging to get through, but it is very kind of fascinating to talk about afterwards. It deals with themes of self-love, self-harm, self-destruction. There's lots of weird symbolism, having a lot dream sequences. But this is ultimately about a relationship between two people who are into each other, but then one person is at a distance for some reason, and Daniel Craig's character can't really figure out why. He keeps trying to kind of bribe his way into Gene's life. He's like, he offers him a salary, or here, let's go on a trip and I'll pay for everything. He's constantly feels like he's having to like court and recourt him, and he kind of fails to look inwardly at what might be wrong with him, or what issues he might have. He drinks a lot. He's an opiate addict. He's got a lot of problems, and so it's a kind of fascinating way to tell the story. I have been thinking about it since I saw it, but man, it was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's long and it's odd, and it's got some dreamlike stuff, especially in the third act, that I think can push people off. I didn't even know any of it was going into a jungle. I just kind of figured it was all going to be in like bars in Mexico City, and this is going to be 100 minutes. When you told me like, oh no, it's over 2 hours, I was like, what do you mean? And there's a point where I paused this movie, never go to the bathroom, and was like stunned at the runtime that was left, because it just feels like in its first act, it moves along so good. It's slow and it's odd for sure, but our setting is rock solid. Craig is this just like sweaty shell of a man who has nobody in his life except for a couple friends who are way more cynical than him and are constantly taken advantage of, like Jason Schwartzman, a man who is constantly having things stolen from him by lovers who are like sleeping with him and then immediately leaving his house and taking his stereo and whatnot. Like these people are just living in a state of decay. Like everything around them is falling apart. They have to talk in hushed tones because if anybody hears them at the bar, they'll be like, oh my God, you're gay. And it's the 50s, right? Like it's so taboo in a way that they just cannot have any real connection. And Daniel Craig is this man who is drunk and high and paranoid all the time. You reminded me of like Hunter S. Thompson, right? Like that Las Vegas movie.
And Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Terry Gilliam. Yeah. Johnny Depp plays him. Yeah. Reminded me a lot of that. But then Drew Starkey shows up, and he's this man who is like so the opposite. He seems so firm and resolute and sturdy and solid. He's a thin guy, but like he just has a presence, and Craig can't look away from him. Like, he can't keep his eyes off him. He's just like mystified by this guy. Like he doesn't even know if he's queer or not, right? Like, and courting him and getting to know him and starting to kind of reach in there, like you start to see this personal growth in Craig that he can feel in himself. It's a fantastic performance. But then things start to turn sideways and Starkey starts to pull away and Craig gets desperate and he starts to feel thin, like he's losing everything, you know? Like it's real good drama, but it's thick drama, and it's a lot of it's like not spoken. It's a little dialogue, and the stuff that is there is odd. William S. Burroughs dialogue that I don't understand. Like, I think Naked Lunch is probably an apt comparison, and that's all set up for like a third act that gets even wilder that we're not going to talk about here because we don't do spoilers on this show. But overall, it's a much more indulgent feature from Guadagnino. Like, Challengers was indulgent, but Challengers was like, we got 3 hot up-and-coming stars. It's a sports movie. We got to deal with IMAX, baby. Like, take your friends and go see Challengers in March. This is way more like dialed back, awards season. You got to go to one of the small screens to see it, you know, and that's part of the reason we missed it. Now that it's on Max, much more accessible, but certainly an odd feature.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Craig's performance, which is really stellar. I'd heard great things. A lot of people felt that he got snubbed for an Oscar nomination. He really disappears into this role because we know him as confident, suave James Bond, and here he is as someone who's capable of meeting and interacting with people, but he just kind of falls to awkward pieces around Gene. And he embarrasses himself a lot, just trying to get his attention and trying to really be, kind of partnered up, be something more serious. And he's sweating constantly. His hair is terrible. He looks like he just disappears into the role. And I don't see James Bond. I don't see Daniel Craig. I see the person that he is, which is really sad, and in someone who's kind of incapable of making the changes he needs to in order to maintain this relationship.
Yeah, I love our setting too. Like, Mexico City, like, looks surreal, and it looks surreal for a couple of reasons. A, because I think a lot of it's sets for sure. B, because a lot of the skies look fake, which is weird. There's definitely some bad skies and some backgrounds. Like, I'll be watching the movie scene and suddenly think like, oh God, I'm pulled out of here. And C, because I think a lot of it's miniature, which is really thoughtful. Yeah. It took me a little while to nail it. Yeah, but there's a few sunrise and sunset shots that like just look unique in a way. They almost have like a tilt shift, like toy feature. This actually comes up in that surreal third act I was talking about. It does kind of lead into something. But for the first few parts, I was like, this just seems like such a dreamlike city, like bathed in these big yellow lights, like big harsh shadows. Like it just seems like a place that's out of time and out of reality. And it kind of works perfect for where Craig is, because he's a man who is hiding. Like he's hiding from the world, and most importantly, he's hiding from himself. Weird place for a writer to be, but I think that's kind of where William S. Burroughs was. So finding this other character, Eugene, who was of military service and has exited that because that wasn't for him, and has exited the United States wasn't for him. He is also a man who's running from something. And like that connection that they have is immediate, it's tangible, and it's fiery, and it's hot. And you get some very hot scenes in this movie. But it all leads to a film that is long, and a film that is complicated, and a film that has a very unique ending, because I think, as I understand it, Guadagnino and Kurtzkis wrote it themselves. The original film the original book was unfinished, as I understand it. So they had to come up with this. And what's here is good, actually. And I'm with Andy. Like, I've been thinking about this movie more and more since I've walked away from it, but it's odd. And out of Guadagnino's recent films, because we've seen a lot of his recent stuff, this one I think is not at the top and not at the bottom. It's in the middle in a way that's unique and strange. It's got its own shape.
Yeah. So just about the end of the novel, the novel was unfinished, and then there were a set of letters called the Yahé Papers, which is mentioned in the film, where he's on the search for this drug that he believes to be telepathic. Those are letters that Burroughs wrote towards the end of his life, and so it looks like they've kind of mixed those letters along with the unfinished novel, and that's kind of how we come to William S. Burroughs. Very strange figure. He was put on trial in Mexico for accident, or for killing his wife in a kind of a drunken accident, where they tried to reenact a William Tell style thing, where she put a glass on her top of his head, and he tried to like shoot it off, and shot her in the face. And he was arrested, and he was on trial. Eventually fled back to the States. So just like really bizarre story. So you see a lot of himself in Naked Lunch. Naked Lunch, it involves a plot device of that character killing their wife, and we get some reenactment of things like this. So it's very much self-inserted in his work.
Yeah. A couple other points on Queer before we move on to recommendations. I want to say I love the look of this movie. One of the things we do here on the podcast, little peek behind the scenes, is post clips of our work and our reviews to YouTube. And we'll often have to go produce a thumbnail out of that, right? Like a great face with some text, font. You've seen it. You've been on YouTube before. It's the picture you click on to get to the video. Well, often for some smaller features like A24's Death of a Unicorn that we covered here, it might be hard to find a good, clear, crisp screenshot with great composition where you can clearly see somebody's face and you can do it. It is no challenge with this movie. Like, it is such a good looking movie for having a small budget. It looks fantastic. Guadagnino worked with his longtime cinematographer, a man whose name I'm going to butcher right here, Sayambo Muktapram. Butchered it, but I think I got through it okay. He shot most of Guadagnino's work. He shot this. Looks fantastic. No complaints about the appearance. Secondly, ton of good needle drops. In this movie, dude. Great music. Really great music. There's a great track by New World Order with this one long oneer of Daniel Craig consuming an opiate and then just kind of like smoking a cigarette and just thinking about it, like looking off into the night air. Like fantastic. Couple like deep cuts from the Prince catalog, like released after his passing, that are basically just like unedited, unheard studio recordings. Like real weird stuff in the soundtrack for Queer, but it's a good time. Like great looking movie, great sounding movie. Craig's tremendous. I feel like I'm saying this is a great time, but it's also a struggle, you know? Like it's unique in a way that I think is not for everybody.
Right. It's very slow. It's very much people talking in rooms. They're in the bar. They're in multiple bars. They're in people's apartments and people's rooms, and it's lots of conversations about life and where they're at and what they want. It's a people talking movie, and it's over 2 hours. So it's a lot to get through, I think.
Definitely. Andy, would you recommend Luca Guadagnino's Queer?
I would say if you're a fan of Guadagnino's work or Daniel Craig, and you're interested in this, want to see what it's all about, I would recommend it for that. If you're on the fence or not real sure, if none of this sounds interests you, I would say probably pass for most people, because like I said, it's a struggle. It is a homework film. It's a eat your vegetables kind of movie. But if you're interested, check it out.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. This movie's challenging in a way that I think is good. Like good art challenges you, But we're nearly on episode 300 of the movie podcast, and we were challenged by this. So I don't know what you're getting into if you've never done a movie like this, but it's tough. It's not for everybody for sure, but I think it's special. And I like this line, I think, from IndieWire. They said Daniel Craig burns a hole in the screen. He sure does, dude. I don't know if he got snubbed for an Oscar. He got a lot of other noms. He's great in this. Starkey's great in this. Guadagnino's great. No complaints about Queer. It's odd, but I think it's a good time. And I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time, especially that great one in the middle of it. Anyway, that's Off Script episode 288. My God, Andy, what a week at the movies. What are we watching next week?
So next week we're doing all streaming, no theatrical releases for us. We'll be taking a look at Y2K, the horror comedy film, which is streaming on Max starting April 4th. One of Them Days, which is the another comedy film starring Keke Palmer and SZA, which is now streaming on Netflix. We're going to be taking a look at that. That was a small hit from January. And then Adolescence, of course, we're going to be talking about the whole show, episodes 1 through 4. No spoilers next week. Some FYI releases. The Minecraft movie comes out this week, April 4th. If you're interested in that, take the kids, take the family. And some upcoming things that we're looking for or that are coming out in April. Drop, which is the cell phone horror film that doesn't look very good, but I've had to see the trailer like 10 times so far. That comes out April 11th, along with The Amateur, which is Rami Malek's CIA revenge action film, also on April 11th. Sinners, which is probably what we're most excited for this month, comes out April 18th. Of course, stars Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld. And The Accountant 2, which is a Ben Affleck vehicle, will be out at the end of the month on April 25th. But for next week, Y2K and One of Them Days.
On Off Script, we're all in Adolescence. That's right. On Off Script, we're all about authentic news here. So we don't typically entertain rumors, but it's the end of the show, and I want to say I heard the Minecraft movie's god awful, and I don't know if it's god awful, but I heard it is, and I don't know if we're gonna end up watching it on the show. But currently, no big plans, man. Like that movie just does not look like my game. You know what I mean? And I played Minecraft. You'd think I'd be into it, but I don't know. Anyway, if you enjoyed the show today, episode 288 of Off Script Film Review, the best thing you can do is just follow us on any sort of social media. Give us a Google, man. Like anything helps. Any SEO, tell your buddies, Off Script Film Review. Tell your buddies are doing a podcast and you're going to check it out with them. Hey, go check out that YouTube page. No joke. You might even see something you like. You might even see a video. You go, hold on a second. I didn't know they covered this. I didn't know Andy and Zach took a look. I should watch this video. You should. And leave a rating and a review and a like and a comment and a subscribe and notification bell. You guys know how this works. You're all online just like us. All these are social media stuff. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Our audio listeners can find us on Spotify, iHeartMedia, iTunes, Amazon Play, Google Plus, Google Prime. You can find our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can email us correspondence directly at offscriptfilmreview.com. Really, guys, any kind of like or anything helps. A comment, a sweet thing, a +1. I don't know why I'm asking. You guys are the best. You're the best fans ever. If you enjoy, I already said if you enjoyed the show today, I'm crashing out. Andy, I got to bail. I got to bail on Off Script.
Bail out.
Bail out. All right, it's time. All right, from all of us at Off Script, the home of both cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.